Yes, it is I, Countess Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on the history of Magic the Gathering, where I go set by set, product by product, letting you know about it to help you understand the history of everything Magic the Gathering that Wizards of the Coast has released. Alright, let's continue with the next set, a core set, 9th edition. So 9th edition was released on July 29th of 2005 and had 359 cards. Now beyond those cards, the basic 350, 9 of those cards were in fact fixed cards which were only in the core game set. So if you could get the core game set, you got these special 9 cards which did not appear anywhere else within the product line of 9th edition. Now, it featured a lot of cards that were very popular from the sets over the ages up until now. It included polls upon the Wizards of the Coast website in order for people to vote for those cards that they felt were their favorites that would be included within the polls within the core set. Many of these reprints had new art, and it's important to note that this was the last set to be white-bordered. Now it was sold in 15 card booster packs, 5 theme decks, a fat pack, and of course the core game pack, which was effectively a starter set or a beginner set. It's important to note it did not have a tournament pack, which had been popular with core sets up until now, and it also had foils, premium black bordered foils that appeared of all the normal cards within the set that appeared within the packs too, and these were black bordered foils. This was the second to last set to feature box toppers. Its release card was a Force of Nature, and it did feature a 24-card demo game pack and a 10-card sampler pack that you could get. With the advent of this core set, they changed the format of the fat pack, including different things in it, and changing around the way that they would have products in with the fat pack itself. So it evolved the fat pack to the next level, closer towards the modern day one. Now this was the first set to be published in Russian. Now, it had a demo card, of course, in Russian of Shivan Dragon rather than Force of Nature, and the popularity of the Russian cards, which were black-bordered, not white-bordered, is assumed to be one of the reasons that when the next core set came out, that it was then black-bordered. It's one of the reasons why this change occurred. Now, this set, of course, being a core set, had no new mechanics. It only used older mechanics. But we saw a return of both Trample and Protection, which hadn't been in a core set since 6th edition, as they were seen to be a little confusing, and it was felt now that players would understand it a little bit more. We could reintroduce these. These weren't complex mechanics, because complex mechanics were ones that weren't reprinted in these. It was all keywords and mechanics that were meant to be on the easier side. Now it's important to note, this is the first set to feature auras. Now, the truth is, up until now, auras had been around since the beginning of the game, but now we had a specialized word for them. Auras are effectively enchantments which are placed attached to another permanent. So, now we had this kind of keyword for them, auras, type of enchantments. This was actually the first core set that also saw equipment added into it. Now, this set, of course, had 2 cycles. The first cycle was a cycle of Lucky Charms. Now, I've talked about cycles of Lucky Charms up until now, but this was the first cycle of Lucky Charms to feature the new ones from Darksteel. Basically, those new Lucky Charms that were printed in Darksteel have replaced those old ones from Unlimited. These are the ones as part of the core game set now. It also had a fairly large cycle of Painlands. Now, there were actually 2 types of Painlands here. It had the allied colored Painlands and enemy colored Painlands. So it almost was like 2 cycles of Painlands. But since there's just 10 different combinations of these, it had the 10 different combinations of mana and Painlands. So they tap for a colorless or tap for 1 of 2 mana, deal you damage. So it was an actual cycle, just a really big one in comparison to most. Now, it had 3 mirrored pairs, including Execute and Slay. There were 25 cards in this set that had been printed in every core set up until now, including Giant Growth. Now, there were 163 cards which were not in this set that had been in 8th, but it also had 165 cards that had not in 8th that were now in 9th, including Web, which was a return. So you can see they switched out most of them and changed it by 2. Now, it did include a number of rarity changes, including Soul Warden, which was now uncommon. Now, the theme decks, of course, were a white deck called Army of Justice, a blue deck called Lofty Heights, a black deck called Dead Again, a red deck called World of Flame, and a green deck called Custom Creatures. It is important to note that this set did not feature any walls. Walls had been removed. Now, we'll see them return once again when we get to 10th edition, but at this point in time, they were felt to be obsolete. Now, let's talk about some of the cards from this set. Let's start with Ancient Silverback. I've talked about him probably before. He's a 6/5, 1 green mana to regenerate. Pretty good one. There was Ballista Squad, which had X, 1 white, tap, deal X damage to target attacking or blocking creature. It is the big deal damage to attacking, blocking, or creature one that I do recommend. He's kind of cool with that one. Beast of Burden, a star creature, where stars equal to the number of creatures in play. I always liked a good Beast of Burden, so I always like to mention when he shows up. Blinding Angel, another one I really do enjoy every time it's printed. 2/4 flyer that when it deals combat damage to an opponent, they skip their next combat phase. So of course, yeah, you can manage to hit your opponent with it, with this flying creature. They don't get an attack phase. It's a cool angel. Clone. When Clone comes into play, it comes into play as a copy of target creature that's in play. So effectively, I play Clone, it's technically another creature in play, and I have a copy of it under my control. Coat of Arms. Every creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature that shares a type with it. So if I'm playing a tribal deck, where I have a lot of different creatures of the same type, guess what? Each of those creatures gets really big when I play Coat of Arms. It's a really good one for tribal decks. Diabolic Tutor. It's the, I search my library for a card, I put it into my hand, I shuffle my library. Ooh, Diabolic Tutor. It is the replacement for Demonic Tutor, which was seen to be too cheap, and it's the kind of standard since then. Elvish Bard. Elvish Bard, when it attacks, it must be blocked by each creature that is able to block it. Basically, it has the lore effect, like the lore enchantment. Elvish Piper. For a green and tap it, you put a creature card from your hand into play. Oh, Elvish Piper. If you're playing a green deck, you can use that to just put out your really big creatures really quickly. Elvish Piper is really good because of that. Exhaustion. Creatures and lands target opponent control do not untap during their controller's next untap phase. Ooh. So you basically say, you there, lands, creatures, don't untap. Flame Wave. It deals 4 damage to target player and each creature they control. You just burn one player and everything they own. Flowstone Slide. It's an X cost spell that creatures get +X, -X until end of turn. It's a great way that you can basically shrink all the creatures on the board, get rid of invulnerability. Ooh, that's a good way to get rid of it. This gets rid of invulnerability. Force of Nature. I always love Force of Nature. It's one of the classic ones I used back in the day for a limited. It's an 8/8 trample that you do have the disadvantage that during your upkeep, it deals 8 damage to you unless you pay 4 green mana. So maybe it's not as good as anything nowadays, but it is a classic. Form of the Dragon. Another spell I do like, another enchantment. Beginning of your upkeep, you do 5 damage to target creature or player. At the beginning of your end step, your life total becomes 5, and creatures without flying can't attack you. You become a dragon, kind of. Form of dragon, hence. Glorious Anthem. All creatures you control get +1/+1. It was the replacement for Crusade in white from before. It's all your creatures now, so it does help a lot. Grave Pact. Of course, Grave Pact. I love Grave Pact. If a creature you control dies, it's put into the graveyard from play. Oh, each of your opponents sacrifices a creature. In a sacrificial deck, Grave Pact is wonderful. Groundskeeper. For a colorless and a green, you may return a land card from your graveyard to your hand. So if you're playing one that would discard lands or sacrifice lands, Groundskeeper is your way to bring it back. Hell's Caretaker. Oh, I love this reprint of it because guess what? It's another one of my favorites. You may only use this ability during your upkeep, but you can tap, sacrifice a creature to return target creature from your graveyard to play. Tokens? Get rid of tokens for more stuff. Another wonderful one. Holy Day. Prevent all combat damage that be dealt this turn. Jester's Cap. 2, tap, sacrifice Jester's Cap. Search target opponent's library for 3 cards and exile them. I just pick 3 things out of my opponent's deck that are very good from them. I like it because of that. Loxodon Warhammer. It's an equipment you equip with 3. The creature that is equipped with Luxodon Warhammer gets +3/+0, trample, and lifelink. Ooh, it's a good one. Marble Titan. Creatures with a power of 3 or greater do not untap during their controller's untap phases. Ooh, keeps things tapped. Ornithopter. We see it make a return. It gets printed a lot after now, but it's a 0 mana cost creature that's a 0/2 flyer. It's a classic. Plague Wind. Destroy all creatures that you do not control. Basically, all creatures your opponents control. They cannot be regenerated. Ooh, Plague Wind. Seedborn Muse. Untap all creatures you control during each opponent's untap phase. So, if you have abilities of things that tap, oh, you get them all back each turn, because you get to untap them just like your opponents do. Silklash Spider, a 2/7 reach that for X and 2 green, you do X damage to each creature with flying. It's the big spider that nukes everything that flies. Soul Warden. Whenever a creature comes into play, you gain 1 life. Any creature, under anybody. Tidal Kraken. A 6/6 that is unblockable. It cannot be blocked. It's always nasty, and I like it a lot. Traumatize. Target opponent puts the top half of their library, rounded down, into their graveyard. Oh, combine that with the spell Haunted Crossroads, which I don't think was actually reprinted in this one, but the 2 of them combined, you basically remove everything from an opponent's graveyard from the game. Well, from their library from the game. Top half in, remove that copy. It's part of really good combos. Traumatize is just always wonderful. I'm just saying, in any situation, because you basically get rid of half an opponent's library. Verdant Force. A 7/7 creature, at the beginning of each upkeep, you put a 1/1 Sapperling into play. And this is not just your upkeep, it's every upkeep. So, if you're playing with a multiplayer game with a lot of players, by the time it comes back to you, you have a lot of Sapperlings. Verdant Force is always good for token generation. It really is, because it's not just on your turn, it's every player's turn. You get 1. Worship. If you control a creature, damage that will reduce you to less than 1 life reduces you to 1. Doesn't stop you from dying from loss of life, but damage doesn't do anything to you. And finally, Wrath of God. Destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated. It's the classic board wipe. And that's it for today. I introduce you to 9th edition, the last white bordered set ever. After now, there were no more white bordered sets. They went extinct. There were also other major changes that you can see in this set. Auras, now being an actual word, something that we recognize nowadays as something commonplace in Magic, that auras are always there. We of course also saw equipment get into the core sets, equipment becoming more of a staple within all the sets as it is now. So these are changes that occurred on a level that meant the evolution of the core set as what it was. We are seeing changes in the way that they look at core sets, that now mechanics which were looked at being complex are compared to other ones and are said like, oh, people can get these. Protection, trample, returning to the fray, some things that hadn't been there. We can see changes occurring within Magic even now into 9th edition. 9th edition was a kind of sign of major changes, because there's only one more core set after now. Core set the way we think of them. 10th edition. After that, there's no 11th edition. There's an edition with an entirely different name, an entirely different way of thinking of things. And those are the big changes we want to talk about, because we're seeing the evolution here at 9th edition. It's an interesting point in history of Magic, because we see the extinction of white border. It's a thing that I don't know if necessarily I feel sad for, but it is an interesting thing. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. I try to support the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you could always check out my Patreon, link description below. There's some great rewards there. It helps to grow and improve the channel. If you want to see some other great Magic the Gathering content, I can recommend my Friends of the Multiverse. Card Bazaar, They Said, We Said, and Tasty Snackies do some great work. Most of them have been on discussing tabletop. Great guys. I always recommend their stuff. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.